It is time.
Hi, everybody.
It's time. Mason's back.
I'm back.
Mason's back, and this is the most energetic I've seen you since being back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have a child now at home.
Yeah.
I mean, your wife has been suffering from tiredness over this child for a few months now, but you now get to enjoy that as well.
I get to share her burden.
Share
because
the burden
it's now our
of
burden.
tired. It's true.
And,
well, it's been your burden all along, but she's just been taking the brunt of it. You too now
Yep.
get to share in it. So there you go. We're back. We're back. Well, I'm back. Mason's really back, and it's Thursday, so it's caucus time. This is another unauthorized caucus, and we figured we'd just dive in with a really lightweight topic today. So that's what we've got in store. We're going to talk about some really easy things. No, not really.
It's politics. Nothing is easy things.
That's
this
true.
Is all, this is all life and death.
That's true. It is. Well, it is. As Americans, it kind of is. As we get to look at this, at least politically, life and death. But before we get into that, let me go ahead and remind you. I was going to take a drink here. By the way, for those of you listening today, and for everyone on the video, if you hear a weird noise in the background, it's because we're in an old building. The Phyllis Schlafly Center is a very historic building in the center of downtown Clayton in St. Louis. 1959, I believe this building was built. We have a boiler in the basement. You know, like the boiler room that bad things happen in all the movies? Yeah, there's a boiler unit and little window units all over the place. This thing is making strange hydro gurgling sounds. It might be plotting our destruction.
It's like that scene in Elf where he gets scared of the thing, the radiator next to the window.
The radiator. I was going to say Home Alone and the furnace in the basement, but that I guess shows the age
that's
difference
me
between us.
downstairs. The boiler downstairs, I've never gone in that room, and I never will.
Well, you lucky man. It's the man cave here. But if you hear that noise, that's what it is in the background. Hopefully it's not plotting our destruction. So we'll proceed through it anyway. But yeah, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Unauthorizedcaucus.com is where you can find all of our past shows, all the links and resources and different things, and the podcast. But most importantly, you can sign up for the email list. You'll find all of our social from there. You can go like, share, and subscribe. Please do that now wherever you're watching this. If you're on X or Facebook streaming, or if you're at YouTube or Rumble, hit the big red button, the big green button, smash the like button, give us a thumbs up. All of those things help the algorithms. And also, please hop into the chat because we want to hear from you. Right now, we have one person in the chat who's not Mason, and then Mason causing trouble. But we will make sure we keep an eye on those as we run through this. Yes, it is, in fact. I see, by the way, already someone's asking, is it opening day? Yes, it's opening day for the home opener for the Cardinals. Of course, everyone celebrated opening day last week, but the real opening day for those of us in St. Louis, for whom this is a great religious feast day, like third only to Christmas and Easter, is home opener. So, yeah, St. Louis, it's a big deal. Got to wear it and show the pride.
Go Cardinals.
Yeah, shush. You go get I told you to bring your Texas flag and wrap it around you, man. And you could have some sort of cultural identity here. That's okay. You don't have to capitulate. You'll eventually learn. You'll learn. It'll grow into it. But go and sign up. Get all the usuals done. And then sign in today and leave us some chats because I want to hear from you. We've got a very interesting topic that we've talked about. This may not be our longest episode because we're going to really dive into this one topic. But I think
and
that
I think
this
I
is
hear Andrew outside trying to get in.
Yeah,
so
that's by the way.
We might have to cut off early to try to keep him out.
You can trash talk Andrew all you want because he's probably not watching. So
yes,
yeah, there you go. Mason's personal project for today. But what you may have seen if you are on our email list, you would have seen it. Oh, see, someone's glad to see you back. It's your mom.
Yes,
your mom's glad to see
Hi, Mom.
you back. That doesn't count. Autumn, goodness, Autumn. Pumping up the Mason here. Okay, we wanted to talk about a very interesting moment that we are in the conservative movement. Or is there a conservative movement anymore? That's a question I want to pose. What does that mean? Where did it come from? Where are we going? But I titled this episode, we titled this episode Conviction, Strategy, and Tactics. Because I think that there is a huge divergence in the conservative movement away from an understanding of well, it's not just to sound like Donald Trump, but away from winning. We have, for a long time, taken loss after loss after loss in the conservative movement from the top to the bottom. And we've seen that over and over again, whether we lose the nomination to some establishment hack that no one really actually seems to like, but that's the person that ends up getting the nomination, or like this past Tuesday, from coast to coast, but especially here in St. Louis, we suffered some pretty nasty losses in local elections, particularly school boards. And we had some really good folks running who were anti-establishment, anti-school, or teachers union and all of the established school things we don't like in the government school system that all lost. It wasn't like they lost tragically, but it was a few thousand votes. It was pretty big. Why are we not winning anymore? What are the conservatives missing? Why are we not turning out people to vote? Is it something deeper than simply voter turnout? Is it an ideological thing? Where do we need to get our ducks in a row? And what does all that mean? Because there is a need to have convictions and to be right, but we also have to have sound strategy and vision and sound tactics in the moment. And I feel like we're missing some of those or how they work together. And we don't always seem to play nice with people when they come in, kind of like the Elon Musk situation of the world, which I'm not saying I trust, but this is a big conversation to have. So we talked about it, and we thought we would make do with it. Mason admitted to me he didn't even think he needed to bring his computer because he's so smart he had it all in his head. I, however, have notes. So we're going to see how this conversation goes today. But let's dive on. What are your initial thoughts? Does my explanation, as long-winded as it is, of this conundrum of conservatism, does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah.
You think I'm off board with some of this, or what's your 30,000-foot view of what I'm saying here?
Well, conservatives like to lose, and then they like to, after they're done losing, they kind of are just happy with themselves and say like, oh well, we still have our principles. We have the moral high ground. We took the high road. We didn't play dirty in this election. We were honest. We were fair. And they're playing against an unfair and dishonest opponent. So of course they're going to lose. And it's what's the point of your conviction when you've been put in a labor camp and you had the chance to fix things? So that's what conservatives do. That's what we and that's us too. I mean, we're part of the conservative movement. We care about conservative causes, but too often we fall into that trap. And I think that's something that's turning around more and more recently of recognizing that okay, we need to put winning and victory higher on our priority list, which I think Trump helped with that a lot.
Yeah.
Because Trump is a guy who likes winning. He likes to win. He likes to emphasize winning to other people. He had that great quote about us doing so much winning that we're going to say, Mr. President, we're so tired of winning. We can't take it anymore, which is ironically, that's what the GOP said. They were like, we're tired of winning. Let's go back to bipartisanship and capitulating on every single one of the left's issues. It's bad. We don't want to do that. We want to go the other way. We want to win.
Well, and this is where I got really, I'm trying to think of the phrasing that I used because I feel like this conversation really had its big moment, or the splash that I can remember, at least the start of it, in 2015, 2016, as Donald Trump ascended to the top of the Republican Party, essentially, and became the nominee, the figurehead of the Republican Party, which is the party that represents, conservatively. Now, we've talked on this program, and actually over the last couple of weeks, too, I think with Andrew, we talked about labels. Labels stink, okay? Labels are incomplete. It's not always helpful. So what do you mean by conservative? What do you mean by progressive? The liberals aren't really liberals. They're all authoritarians. I'm a liberal because I'm a classical liberal. All of these things change and are insufficient for completely describing your political philosophy and your moral philosophy and convictions. So we're operating under that understanding, inside of that understanding, that it's a broken system to just describe something as conservative. And then also, what do you mean, American conservative or European conservative? Because those are very different things as well. But as we march through this, there was a huge pushback of, well, that's not conservatism, because you're just stripping away this civility and this, I don't know, some sort of idea that people had about, well, this is what it ought to look like. Well, hey, guess what? None of us are exactly as dignified as the statesmen of old. We're all walking around in cargo shorts now, and look at what they did 250 years ago. Like, the casual attire of the founding fathers was a lot different. So society has changed. But in a certain regard, yes, I would love to return to that style of statesmanship. But at that point, you look at the conflicts that were being resolved inside the Constitutional Convention. Everyone in this room was on a pretty relatively similar page when it came to the big 30,000-foot view morals, why we're here, what we've just done, and the direction that we want to go. You're arguing, and this is an analogy I've used a lot, you're arguing about maybe different directions to go inside the same system. Well, we should do it a little bit this way, we should do it a little bit this way. That's not the fight that we're in now. We have allowed a Marxist contingency of people to gain a foothold, and it has grown and spread like cancer, particularly in the executive branch, but throughout the country, in academia, in media, in all of the different sections, the ivory towers, the cathedrals, the Leviathan, all of our favorite phrases that we can just throw in there.
The octopus.
The octopus. The octopus. But I would, never mind. I was about to go into an MMA joke there with Octagon, but I'm going to pull it back. It wasn't fully formed.
The octagon.
The octagon. But we are now looking at a different enemy, a different battlefield, a different era in American history. And it doesn't matter how correct we are, how right we are about an issue, if we can't go and win inside the system, your rightness is irrelevant. And that is what I think that one of the major things that Donald Trump brought back was, let's punch hard and win. And I know a lot of people, well, that's not very, and I thought, well, what are we going to sacrifice the ability to govern and win elections on the altar of civility? That's not the chief, that is not the chief principle. That is a principle, and it's not a bad principle at all, but that's not the chief principle. And I felt like it was just an excuse. Not really someone, I don't think that there are a lot of people out there who believe in civility above all. I think it was an excuse because Donald Trump, his personality, his Twitter, or just having to specify issues again and get into the nitty gritty of things like sovereignty and immigration made them uncomfortable. So this is an excuse to move forward. And I think that that showed, that didn't cause a fracture in the Conservative Party, or in the Republican Party, in the conservative movement. I think that the era of Trump showed a fracture that was already there in beginning. To your point, we'd spent years like seemingly enjoying losing and moving a different and incorrect direction. And that was, party hacks and establishment globalists that have come into the upper laurels of the party and run amok with it.
Right. Well,
George Bush era. Thank you for that, by the way, Texas.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, lots of oil. That's good. Yeah. That's good for America. Thank you, George Bush. We love you. Anyways, yeah, you're definitely right. It wasn't a reaction to Trump that kind of brought out these issues. I think it points more to kind of a contradiction or a paradox in classical liberal philosophy generally of, you like, where the only thing you want to do once you get power is limit your own power. That doesn't make very much sense, and that doesn't really that philosophy doesn't lend itself to successfully keeping power and instituting goals out in society. And plus, like, what are the goals of classical liberalism? We've kind of completely lost those. They exist, but they're buried deep within the past, and people don't really bring those up, of this like engagement in the Western tradition and like trying to pursue the Platonic ideal of man and like turning ourselves into that, and the idea that that like there is a model citizen and we should work together, using our liberty to become that model citizen. It's classical liberalism isn't about, everybody do what they want, you go have your drag queen story hour, that is not classical liberalism. Right. The issue is that classical liberalism isn't very good at stopping that at all, because like if you get into power, you're gonna call government overreach on yourself the second you try to stop stuff like that.
Right.
That's why there has to be this is a theme that I think has popped up every once in a while, that sometimes to protect liberalism there has to be a degree of anti-liberalism. Like we see with Millay, who's like a radical. He takes classical liberalism to like its the furthest reaches of its logical extremes. But when the people of Argentina are revolting because they don't think about economics in the same way, he has to use state power in an illiberal way to put them down. There's this in ancient Rome, they had...
Well, here it is. Now you're just going down the path of internet. How many minutes has it been, and we're on ancient
This is
Rome?
not internet. I went to Hillsdale. This is my college education.
Okay. I'm just go.
They had this instituted into law in the Roman Republic where somebody had to stand up and defend the the sovereignty of the republic when there was an external or internal threat coming after their way of life, and you might want to call it a danger or a consequence of having that sort of system that can actually protect you, that can provide security, is it can produce Julius Caesar, who is going to do away with the Republic and institute, the empire.
Right.
But we all too often forget when we're thinking about politics, that politics takes place through time, and regimes go through cycles. Plato talks about this, that there's cycles of regeneration and degeneration. Spengler also talks about this. We're going through time, and our regime is going to change. It has changed since the founding, and sometimes we just reach a point where it has to transform into something new, where it has to, not where we should or shouldn't, or should want to or should not want to, but instead it's just the life cycle of the nation demands it.
Yeah, and I think some of what part of this to me relates to the conversation we had, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it might have been the first week Andrew was on, or was it with you? We talked about the myth of libertarianism. That was you.
Yeah.
You were. Yeah. It was a week you were remote. That's why I'm remembering it this way, because you were on a screen, not here next to me. So when we talk about the myth of libertarianism, I see in the particularly the last 30, 40 years of American politics, the creep of what I call the myth of libertarianism has done amazing damage to the conservative movement by moving the direction you said, that just, let people do what they want, which doesn't work. This is not conservatism. This is not classical liberalism. This doesn't work that way. And it really, what it reminds me of is we need a return to an understanding like Russell Kirk gave us, that political problems at their base are religious and moral problems. There are religious and moral answers to each of these issues, and trying to strip that out of it and just make it some sort of amorphous blob of, we all just kind of respect each other and get along, but you're free to do whatever you want. No, I'm going to harken back to my high school years here, and a professor that taught the very specific freedom you can interpret to mean license to do what you want. Liberty you can interpret to mean freedom under the constraint of a moral law. America has always operated in that way. When we are conserving something, this Western Judeo-Christian republic, we're conserving a system that gives you freedom under the constraint of a moral law. And we all recognize and understand that moral law comes from this place, and this is how it's been set down. So as we've moved forward and lost that, we've really lost the effectiveness of having a conservative movement, of having good articulated principles on things. To your point, it's just kind of, we should just, that doesn't win you anything. You're not articulating something. And I think that's what we're starting to see is we've arrived at what I guess an inescapable conclusion that there really isn't a conservative movement any longer. It's gone, and it's in need of remaking because no one knows what it means. It's turned into either infighting or the myth of libertarianism or whatever it is, but it is clear that we haven't had policy prescriptions that are clear, or even positions on issues that are clear for a long, long time. And I think that we are finally seeing in the cycles of history, the younger generation rejecting this postmodern myth of libertarianism. So on the conservative side, we're seeing like Gen Z and lower returning to, no. There is order, and we must conduct ourselves in order. And that doesn't just mean the freedom to do whatever, and we're all just about freedom. That means order first. And this is the kind of thing when you see, so here's what we have to do to return ourselves to a point of order and establish moral law, and now we move into liberty and freedom. It's uncomfortable, but it is a leg of conservatism that needs to exist, and I think it's finally coming back into its own. And there I'm using conservatism just as you and I understand each other as conservatives, not leftists.
Right.
But what are we conserving? That. So that's, as then we talk about and move into the idea of how do we win based on that. One thing that I wrote down in my notes, I think that it is often talked about how conservatives, are really good at reason, logic, numbers. We know how this is how it works and why it works, but we miss the emotion of it, and we need to emote with people better. And the emotional people on the left are always making emotional arguments and missing the reason. I think that's a three-legged stool, and you're only arguing over which one of these two is most important or how to balance the two. It's not about balancing the two. The third one is faith. There's a spiritual nature to man that we, as conservatives, as classical liberals who understand the Judeo-Christian principles underneath this, we understand that need. And I think that has long been forgotten in our arguments as we try to appeal to people's reason, to their emotions, but we need to appeal to their spiritual need for order and liberty inside of that order, for fundamentally a purpose and meaning and fulfillment. That's what people are looking for.
Yeah.
And we've lost that as a culture. And then as a political party, we have lost that as part of the equation of how we appeal to people and get them to understand the position. So we build our positions based on these things and we start to reach out to them. There's some really interesting dynamics that I think are completely missing. And it's also missing from the conversation, not just missing from the end result.
Right. Well, yeah, but I don't know if a culture can recover, because...
You think there's no... Well, go ahead. Continue before I...
Well, yeah, I'm very much so informed by Spangler on this, and he talks about how cultures are essentially organisms, and they have like a cycle of birth, and then they rise, and then they decay. And he wrote Decline of the West like a century ago, so he already thought we were in the decline of the West a century ago. And there's not, you don't go, because he does them in the seasons, and it ends with winter. You don't go just back to spring in the same culture. A new culture starts in spring. A new culture is born, which, when we're thinking in terms of history, it might be a very long time till we get to that point. But that doesn't mean that our ideas are lost, because he distinguishes Western culture from classical culture. There's a difference between the two. They're separated by time, they're separated by place somewhat. I mean, it's both Europe, but there's the gap between the two, what we call the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages. And that is what we are conserving. So just because it's from a long lost culture, it's not lost. We rebirthed it in the Renaissance, and we preserved these texts, and which allowed us to preserve these ideas and give it another go, especially in things like the American founding. And that is what we should seek to conserve, because it's these ideas that allow us to have this principle of faith, this traditional principle of faith that the three-legged stool you talk about can stand on. I'm thinking about Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter in 1823 to this guy named Henry Lee. This was like a year before Thomas Jefferson died. And this guy was just like asking about, the war for independence and the ideas behind it. And Thomas Jefferson writes about how the Declaration of Independence isn't his. He wrote it, but it's not like he just came up with all this stuff. He wasn't like the French revolutionaries that's like, what if we just made the 24-hour day completely different? He was like, no, I am part of something bigger than myself, and I'm drawing on something much older than myself, and this is just my attempt to reassert this. And he lists out all these thinkers, Aristotle, Cicero, etc., these people that he is drawing on, that America doesn't just exist in a void. It didn't just pop into existence out of nowhere. It has this through line all the way back to ancient history, to the unity of Athens and Jerusalem that creates the West.
Well, and this is actually, I mean, just to break in, I don't want to break your train of thought here, as someone says in the chat, who may or may not be biased, whose identity I'm not going to reveal. This is great. But the Mason fan club is back out. Andrew, I'm sorry, the people have spoken. The Mason fan club.
I have a much more vocal
By the way,
fan club.
Do you have a vocal fan club? What can I say though? There's Dan here says, "I'm glad to see you back too, Mason. I am not your mom." I'm glad we cleared that up.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm glad we've cleared that up. So the Mason fan club is here. No, I don't want to break your train of thought, but what this is reminding me about, by the way, because this is a very, this is a very heady, academic, theoretical, whatever you want, a philosophical conversation. Versus some of the super practical nuts and bolts conversations that we've had. But this reminds me, on the practical recent side, there have been people who start to get into this in the political realm who get into hot water, because the whole, well, of course, one of the left's favorite shticks is to immediately call you Hitler or a Nazi or other things I'm probably not supposed to say on YouTube, but I'm saying right now. But
bye-bye channel.
Bye-bye. Hey, Rumble crowd, what's up? Everyone go over to the big green monster and get rid of the red devil. So, sorry, that probably is going to hurt on YouTube too, but I don't care. You remember Steve King, got in big, Congressman Steve King from Iowa, who was drawn out of his district. Wonderful man, Phyllis's favorite congressman. That's what she always called him while he was in office. Yeah. She played favorites, and she was right to, because Steve King was fearless in saying things that were true. He spoke up in defense of Western civilization. And Steve King is a very down-to-earth, grounded dude, but he is very knowledgeable. He really is kind of a founding father of the modern day.
Yeah.
He just knows and can pull from a lot of these things. And he talked about Western civilization and started to kind of have, we're not just preserving America here, we're preserving Western civilization. Oh, you white supremacist. That's the other one they like to throw at you. This isn't about white, this has nothing to do with your skin color or even really nationality or background. This has to do with a system of ideals. And it came before America. America has embodied it in a great way, and it is slipping away. Not just America, our Western civilization is in jeopardy. And he got canceled for that in a big way.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the end, I feel like, because they continued to go after him until they finally buried him and got him out of Congress and out of the public eye. And this is a very interesting topic to get into because you realize how long this stretches outside of our American experience and how our American experience really is, yay for America. But it's not just because we're a people group who all lived here together that we are Americans and we all spoke the same language and dressed the same. We're a nation founded on principles and ideas. This is what we coalesce around. It's important. This is the whole purpose. We have a common language, but we have common goals, common ideas, common values. This is why assimilation is such a big deal in immigration. This is why talking about these things and understanding these historical principles is so important for you and I, and you and I who are involved in the political sphere, because it's not just winning and losing. It's not just this one issue. Even though issues like life and marriage and sovereignty are incredibly important, they all come back to a system of thinking, and we can go all the way out to this Western civilization, and we've lost as a society in large part the ability to have these discussions, think about these things, and understand the great context that comes with it.
Right.
And it's just peppered with issues.
I mean, yeah, we're in a winter of our civilization. If you can't even talk about defending your civilization and in government without getting destroyed.
Right. Let me ask you a question from the chat that's coming here on YouTube. Someone says, I think the general populace is not totally convinced that there is a deep state in the educational realm, and that they still have the best interests of the individual student at heart. You, coming more recently than me out of the academic world, now I know Hillsdale.
Yeah.
Hillsdale's awesome. We all know, by the way, this is a free plug. Hillsdale, if you want to sponsor the channel, you can. Please let us know. But they have some cool free courses you should go and check out at Hillsdale's website. Lots of really, really cool stuff that's very accessible, and you should go and get it. Unauthorized Caucus at phyllisschlafly.com. If you're listening, you're from Hillsdale, and you want to talk about an endorsement process with the channel, let us know. But you have connections. You should let them know. But what do you think? Being closer to this, just age-wise, experience-wise than me, do you think that that's actually a pervasively accurate statement that most folks don't actually think that higher academia, higher education is really part of this cabal that hates America and is trying to twist and contort youth? And do you think that people actually have a positive view of educators and education in America, or do you think that it is a little more negative? I don't know if I agree with this. I think that people actually do generally negatively view it, but what do you think?
I think that conservatives generally have a negative view, and rightfully so, because they've turned into leftist indoctrination camps. But I can't as much speak to people's perception of it, but I do know the facts. And the facts are that right before World War II started, the Rockefeller Foundation financed a bunch of academics to come from Europe to the United States. And them working with the New School, with the approval of the State Department, decided, okay, we're going to take all these professors and spread them all around the U.S. and get them good jobs in all these universities. So and where did these professors come from? The Frankfurt School, which they were all getting out of there because
I have news for you. Wikipedia says that's a conspiracy theory. There is no Frankfurt School.
There is a Frankfurt School. It is extremely real. People they just call it a conspiracy theory now because the right figured out about it. But even 5 years ago, this was not that many people knew about it.
You know what the definition of conspiracy theory is? Something the left doesn't like.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So so you know.
And you go to the New School's website, and they still brag about this today, about how they spread these professors all around the country, and they are spreading progressive ideas to the students. And so those guys trained the next generation of professors, and because they had already infected academia, they were able to have a say in who the rest of the professors would be, and that's how we, get in this snowball process of, your professor now has blue hair and gender pronouns, and you were like, what is this? I thought I was paying for school. And it's just this bizarro freak show of, gender theory and anti-Semitism now, that it's like that you're ruining your financial standing for. So yeah, the deep state of academia is real, and it got to that point with the approval of the government. It still has the approval of our government, and it feeds the other way, because when there's all these bureaucracies, both the deep state that we have and just the administrative state that's more above water that people will recognize. When they want a reason to do something, who are they calling? They're calling the professors at these institutions to write up these white papers with ridiculous reasons for why, Greta Thunberg needs $2 billion. It works both ways, and it's connected to the real deep state. That's just part of the cathedral.
Right.
This idea of the cathedral of essentially the regime. The academia provides the intellectual and moral justifications for what our state is doing.
Right. And that's, I like how, Ed talks about on his program all the time that the narrative machine, the deadly cocktail, big media, big tech, big government. But honestly, that is just, there you've named three of the essential ingredients of the deep state. Big media, big tech, big government, but there's also big academia and there's a few others, the nonprofits, the fourth branch of government. Thank you, Colonel John Mills, a good friend of ours and a friend of the Pro America Reports. We should talk about having guests on this program every once in a while.
He would be a great guest.
He would be a good one. You could just let him go. But you look at this is the deadly cocktail of, we know, very specifically, and to your point, you go to New School, it's not really a secret. There has been a very purposeful invasion of particular institutions. And to your point, you don't have to get out to all the children. We just have to teach the teachers. And enough generations of that down the road, we have the system as a whole. Like, we've got it by the throat. We've invaded all of the institutions necessary in society to effectively flip culture on its head itself. It's really, I think that the evidence is there, and to the point of the comment here that the general populace isn't convinced that there's a deep state in the educational realm. I don't know. The mushy middle is an interesting thing out there, but I think that particularly in the post-COVID era, now that I've said that word, we're going to have a flag on YouTube. It's just fun to bash YouTube.
If we haven't gotten banned by now, I don't think we ever will.
No, a flag, a little community flag underneath the video. Oh, you mentioned COVID-19. Here's the CDC's website. Yeah. Everyone's realized that they're not trustworthy. And when I say everyone, I think that actually the greatest thing that has come out of the whole COVID-19 drummed up pandemic, people don't trust as easily the institutions of power and influence anymore. I think that was a very big hallmark moment for society in general, the general populace, to look at everyone in power and go, wait a minute, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Let me go look at this. Now, I don't think that they've exactly got the willpower to go and find things out for themselves. Obviously, only 14% of people bothered to show up and vote for school board this past Tuesday, at least in our county. But I think that was a watershed moment for people just knowing, I think they're lying to me. And that's a bigger step than just, the government's never really looking out for us. You give obligatory lip service to it, but people didn't authentically distrust like they do now, in the numbers that they do now. That was, I think, a good thing because, the point of the comment here, I think it's moving people along to the understanding of there really is a deep state that exists, this grand scheme of marching through the institutions. A Frankfurt School, a cultural Marxist. So there's a lot to it there.
And Colonel Mills is definitely, John Mills is a great guy to learn more about that from.
There's a good resource.
War Against the Deep State.
Yeah, War Against the Deep State. I'll put him. You want to go and make sure you go to philschlafly.com and sign up for the email list, because I'm going to link to not just his Substack and books, but maybe a couple of other things, because he is a fantastic resource on, if you want to know the hows, who's, what's, whys, whens, wheres, John Mills is one of the people to go to. Very educated man and very good at explaining this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that, coming back, we probably should wrap up here. But I think that coming back to it, one of the things I was thinking of is when we wrote this headline, conviction, strategy, tactics, there's a lot of things to understand here. And there's a lot of components that are needed. And I think there's a lot of components that are lacking. But I thought about this. I thought, okay, what do conservatives have and not have? And I feel like two things that we're lacking. Conservatives have conviction. I know what they think on issues. You know, in general, our movement, if it even exists, which I cast doubt on that, but our movement, we know like what we think about issues, but I think we're lacking two very specific things that are different than each other but have to go hand in hand: strategy and tactics. I would say that strategy is defining long-term goals, casting a vision for how you're going to achieve these goals, but it's a long path, and the tactics are much more oriented in smaller steps and shorter times. I think that conservatives are really bad at tactics, and I think conservatives are pretty bad at strategy.
Yeah.
But we're good on the conviction.
Yeah.
And I think that I look at it and say, the strategy is going in a different direction than what we are electorally. The tactic was picking Donald Trump in 2016, 20, and now 2024. That's the tactic, and that's needed. The goal, the conviction, is free speech. The strategy is moving toward, X, Y, and Z. The tactic is Elon Musk is my ally and friend. Do I trust him implicitly on all? No, I don't trust Elon Musk on all the issues. But tactically, this is advantageous to me. He gets just enough. What is that? We were listening to a podcast this week, Astral
Flight Simulation.
Astral Flight Simulation.
Yeah.
They had Charles Haywood on, and it was talking, no, I don't trust Elon Musk. I don't even know if he fully gets it, but he gets enough of it to be dangerously good for me and dangerously bad for the regime in charge now. That's a tactical ally. And I think that conservatives need to understand, okay, here's a strategic direction to go. Here's a tactical ally, but that doesn't mean that they're exactly like me and understand all of these things. They're not a kindred spirit of all of the different issues and convictions that I have, but it is a tactical ally. I need to not alienate that person. I need to learn how to adopt these things because we have got to move in this direction, or all of us lose the ability to speak these convictions out loud whatsoever. So that reminded me. I found a good one. I went down. You're going to the Roman civilization. I'm going back farther. We're going back to Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Yeah. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. We are missing strategy and tactics inside the conservative
I should
movement.
get that as a tattoo.
There you go.
On my forehead.
In Chinese.
Yeah.
And then we'll get in good with the CCP, and then
Yeah.
maybe they'll sponsor us.
Yeah.
No,
Yep.
don't do that. Actually, that'd be bad. The rest of our listeners would follow and would fall off. They would get rid of it. But no, that's I look at it and say we are missing it. We sometimes we have these lightning moments of strategy, but there's no tactics, and it is in fact the slowest route to victory. It's horrible. And then other times, everyone in the world is running off on tactical things here and there, but there was no strategy. The noise before defeat. We need to understand these two things and combine them with our convictions, and understand how to make this work into being right, into moving the right direction, into doing things the right way, and into bringing the right tactical allies alongside when the time is right for the right thing. And the fragmentation I've seen from all the different factions, particularly in the era of Trump, tells me we are missing strategy and tactics altogether, and we probably don't even have the convictions down right. It is time for a serious reexamination, rebuilding of the conservative movement, if it's even still there or could be called that anymore. And I think it's time for us to examine that.
Yeah.
This kind of conversation between you and your family and friends. And I mean, it's heady stuff. Like, you were going back into the different thinkers, authors, the Renaissance and the Roman Empire. I just went back to, Sun Tzu and Chinese military stuff.
That's not Western.
It's not Western at all, but it's applicable.
Yep.
Yeah. See, the eating of the yin and yang here. Another Eastern reference, sorry.
We're yin and yang?
I guess so. Well, it could be yang and yin. I don't care.
I'll be yin.
Is there something about Coke and Pepsi? Because it's a more American version of that. Two
Coke
sides of
Coke
the same
and Pepsi.
coin. Both of them cancerous, gelatinous tubs of sugar that's not sugar, but yet both of them purely American.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. We're going to come up with analogies off the air next time. This is spiraling
We
out
can
of
stick
control.
with yin and yang. I'm yin, you're yang.
I was just trying to make it modern and Western, dude. You just don't have to throw it back at me. All right. That's it. That's a big tactical allies. That's good. Yeah, I think that this is a big conversation. We've tried to compact it down into 35, 40 minutes here. That obviously can't really be done. But I think that this is incredibly important, and I think that it's incredibly important that people realize not only this conversation, this necessary three-legged stool of conviction and strategies and tactics that all have to be of like mind inside the conservative movement, but we also have to recognize who the enemy is, that it is in fact a deep state, that there is in fact a cabal, another ideology, another religion if you will, because there's a religious component to it that is actively working against the principles that forged America. And the sooner we recognize that, and the sooner we get our act together on conviction, strategy, and tactics together, I think the sooner we can actually start to move forward and either save America, save Western civilization, or rebuild in a new way, a new culture moving forward. Either way, would you agree the principles are still there? Even if America's toast and we're starting over, which I don't quite know what that looks like.
Right.
The principles will be at the base of whatever the rebuild is if we're being guided by the principles and not the facade of America that's on it right now. We will find victory in the end as a human race.
Yes.
I don't know. I just tried to get eloquent and wax poetic.
I like it. I
There
think
you go.
that's you hit it home with that one.
There you go. Hit it home. See, Coke, Pepsi, baseball, opening day for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
We just,
Go Cardinals.
yeah. Oh, faker. I'm just kidding. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mason, for being back.
Thank you for letting me come back.
You're welcome. The Mason fan club has spoken. Andrews, I guess we'll just have a cage match sometime, and I'll set up a literal cage somewhere here in the Phyllis
Boxing
Lafley
ring.
Center.
Octagon. That's why you brought that up.
The
earlier.
octagon, yeah, you and Andrew can go at it in an octagon of some kind, and we'll run that direction and see what happens in the future. But
I'll box him. We could do that for a caucus one week.
like a charity caucus boxing match.
Yeah.
That could work. That could work. Well, while we plan on that, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Make sure you sign up for the email list because there's going to be some goodies today that you won't want to miss. Like and share and subscribe. Please, wherever you are, share this link with a friend. Ask them what they think and start the conversation in your own sphere of influence because this is the only way that we move forward as a society, as a civilization. We got to talk about these things and understand. So I would say get your nose out of your phone, but if you're watching us on your phone, don't turn it off. But don't flip over to games or Netflix. Go read a book. Listen to an audiobook. And we'll see you next Thursday on another Unauthorized Caucus at noon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.